Laura Garnett, welcome to Get Gutsy.
Hello, thank you. I'm so delighted to be here.
I know we're gonna have a blast, and I love that you and we're in these rooms with windows with light beaming in. I just feel very warm and cozy and excited. How about you?
Me too. No, it's a warm, well, it's kind of an interesting weather day, but I'm feeling great. How
Yeah,
about
I'm feeling really good. We're recording this, y'all, on a Friday. It's the Friday before Memorial Day weekend here in the US. And so there is this excitement in the air. We're like, oh, the unofficial start to summer. And Laura and we live in the same-ish area, which is very cool. How long? I think we've known each other about a year and a half now. I think it's been about
Yes.
a year. Well, we've met since we've met.
Well, the ladies gathering started soon after Zoe was born. So that she's a year, like 19 months now. So,
Okay.
that's like a year and a half, a little over. So yes, I think.
Yeah, and I remember distinctly because you had gotten in touch because you were moving to this area, Berkshires, you live in New York State, but it's close to this kind of like Berkshires deal. I live in
Yeah.
Massachusetts. And you had reached out and it's like, we couldn't figure out the schedules and nothing was ever happening. And it was just life, right? And you were now pregnant. At that point, you'd already had your baby, but I think you initially reached out when you were pregnant or something like that. And, I have 3 kids. So it's like, you imagine, it's like you got the spinning plates and then the business and then your body and then your relationship. And then it was like, okay, yes, you had said, I have this women's thing. Like, oh, that sounds awesome. And I was at Gabby Bernstein's like this book launch thing in New York, and she was telling the story, and it was about you, and it was like the next day, and it was beautiful. And I'm like, wait, that's the Laura. It was like all the worlds were colliding and the dots were connecting. And I just thought, oh my gosh, this is what it is when you really step more fully into your great work and this life that you're meant to live, that you meet the coolest people. So you're a very cool person.
Absolutely. And it was an amazing gathering. I loved it. Especially
yes, absolutely.
the presence of a baby and a newborn,
Right. Well, you're passionate about bringing women together and having elevated conversations about what's really going on. But let's go back in time. Let's look at where you started your career. We're going to get to what you're doing now. You recently published your book. We're going to talk about that. But let's go back because, what's interesting is sometimes we'll look at someone who's like, they have a book, they're speaking on stages, they have this giant company, and the silly part of our brains go, yes, it was just always like that. That's how they started. No, it's not. We start at the beginning. So let's go back to the early part of your career. What were you doing? Where were you working?
So I was in the corporate world for 11 years. So 7 of those were with Capital One. 3 of those were with Google. And then the last year was with an internet startup. And really what kind of prompted the work that I'm doing now was a massive career crisis that I had at Google, of all places. And that's when I started asking some bigger questions that I had never asked myself before, such as, what am I best at? What is what kind of work is going to fulfill me? And what is it that I'm going to do that's going to allow me to be really successful? Because I felt at Google and in my corporate career that I was making progress, but not in a way that felt right for me, and not in a rapid rate. So at that point, when I went through the crisis, I started seeking answers. And, fast forward, I didn't find any. So I ended up quitting Google and taking this job at this internet startup. And then that was in 2009 when the world crumbled.
Right.
And I got laid off. And, to me, getting laid off was one of the greatest gifts. I always say I was kind of spit out of the corporate world. And it was that moment. I actually was working in a Frank Gehry building. I don't know if you remember that crazy Frank Gehry building in Chelsea.
The IAC building,
yes.
That one on the West Side Highway. Yeah, with like the crazy windows that become like tinted or
yeah, it's a wacky building. And I'd always said I want to work in that building.
That building's cool.
Yeah, and I did for like 9 months or like a little under a year, and then got laid off. And it was a horrible. I literally was called into this office, and there was tape on the windows, and they just informed me that the company's not doing well, but we're letting people go, and you're one of the first. So it was, and I was escorted out of the building, and I was
that moment,
like 15 person startup. So everyone was freaking out and like, where are you going? And it was pretty horrible experience. But I remember walking out of that building and saying, and I had known that I had not found my dream job being there. And I thought, enough is enough. I'm done. I have to create my dream job from scratch. Right. And that was the beginning of this work. And, you know, it also was the business world was crumbling. So it was a really weird time to be saying, yeah, let me just start my own thing. But that's what started it. And I was really determined to solve the problem that I had in my career crisis, which is figure out who I am, what I'm meant to do, and then go create that.
I love that. So that was what you were dealing with. And so you said, well, I'm going to go solve that, and I'm going to help other people solve that. Did you know that that was what you would be doing? You just needed to do it for yourself, and then it led to that.
I started with myself because it was really interesting, because in parallel to getting laid off, I also had what I thought was my dream job land in my lap. So it was kind of, it was sad to get laid off, but this teacher, his name is Srikumar Rao. He wrote a book called Are You Ready to Succeed? And I had seen him speak. He had come to Google to speak. I had pursued him and saw him in other avenues. And I had approached him after one of his talks and said, he was talking about how to be happy and loving your life. And it really appealed to me. And I thought, this is what I want. And I said to him, I went up to him and I said, hi, I'm Laura Garnett. I love your work. And if you ever need anyone to work with you, I would love to do that. And so about a week before I got laid off, he called me and said, can we have coffee? And at the time he was teaching his course at Columbia Business School. And he said, I want to take the class and turn it into a business. Do you want to come help me build that? And so I thought, oh my gosh, manna from heaven, you know, this is my dream job all in my lap. So at that point I had said, well, let me transition out of my corporate job over time, and I'll just work for you like 10, 20%. Well, I got laid off a week later. I called him and said, I'm 100%. And, you know, and I thought, I'm ready. And, you know, that's when I thought I was building my dream job through doing that. But I knew, you know, I was figuring out what was best for me. I thought that was, but of course, the process taught me otherwise. And I spent, you know, 3 years, probably 2 or 3 years, really, through trial and error learning. And I was taking notes, and actually the methodology that's in the Genius Habit in my book really started, the seeds were planted in that moment. And then of course, over the past 10 years have taken root and sprouted. And what I did and the changes that I made, started making more sense after 3 years. But that first 3 years, I gave myself, you know, if this doesn't feel right, let me completely change and try something else. It was a lot of experimentation, but it was also a practice in getting connected to myself and knowing that when it didn't feel right, I took action versus what I did in the corporate world, which was when it didn't feel right, I felt bad about myself and tried harder.
Right. So that's an important distinction. I want everyone listening to take that in. Yes. You made the bold move to say, when this doesn't feel right, I'm going to honor that and I'm going to change it. I'm going to change it. I'm going a different direction. Because I mean, I have a corporate background as well. And I'm so grateful for it because gosh, it prepared me for everything that I'm doing now. Is also working in New York City. I say, if you can work and make it there, you can really do your thing anywhere. But it's very much, I had that similar experience where you just freaking sucked it up and you pushed it down. And it was such a culture of, we would work our butts off and then we'd go and party our butts off. And so it was this whole kind of numbing and overworking and over partying. And so that it was very easy to get yourself into a place where you go, wait, how did I get here? And when you start having those wake up call moments, and for you, yours came, it's like you got the layoff. Okay, well then you have this space that opens up to say, wait, I've got to do this differently. I'm going to do this differently. So did you work for, he goes by Srini sometimes, right? Srini Rao?
No, I know Srini Rao. It's
okay,
actually
that's a different person. Okay.
Srikumar Rao. Srikumar Rao's a bit older than Srini Rao.
Okay.
Srikumar's now probably in his 60s or 70s.
Okay.
Anyway, I worked with Shrikkumar for about a year.
A year. Okay.
Of course, when I was working with him, it only took up a percentage of my time. And I was trying to figure out, so I thought at first my dream job was working with gurus or big, personal growth leaders and helping them build their business. And so I started working with two other people as well. And that lasted for like a year because I soon realized there was something not right about that, and helping someone else build their business wasn't it wasn't fitting completely. So I pivoted. And at that point I said, no, I'm going to build my own business.
Right.
And start working with people. And that started with, I'm going to help build their personal brand. And then I started getting even more, detailed. And I was kind of, I took notes and tracked things, which is in the genius habit. When you read it, we'll talk about the tracker. But I would take note of the moments that I was really in the zone and really engaged, and also notice when I was super fulfilled. And I didn't have those moments when I was focusing on the brand itself. It was really, I noticed it was helping people see themselves for who they are and helping them apply that to them career rather than build a brand and help you grow your business. And that was an interesting shift for me, because I realized in that shift, there was something about building businesses that felt really cool to me and more sexy versus the other. But it was also a big shift in just being more authentic to who I am and what I'm really good at. So that's kind of when things shifted again. And I had to came up with a new ideal client, and I chose to focus more on the corporate world rather than entrepreneurs, which I had a corporate background, but I had more of an entrepreneurial network in New York City. So I made some significant shifts along the way with the driving principle being, this is better for me.
This is better for you. So when you're making those shifts, because I know a lot of our listeners are in that space now, they're in the midst of a shift. And it's not as simple as just, I used to have a stick shift car. It's not as simple as like going from second to third. It's like, there's a lot that goes into that. There could be a change in cash flow. There could be a change in, oh my gosh, I got to go hang out with some new audiences. I need to make a tweak to my offers. I need to go, whatever. And so walk us through the reality of that shift when you went from, okay, entrepreneurs to corporate. And this is, how did you do that? How did you navigate?
Yeah. And I remember it well because I was, living in New York City, and I was going out a lot and going to a lot of entrepreneurial events. And I felt like I was gaining momentum in having entrepreneurial clients. And mostly it was small businesses run by women, which I liked, but I felt like it wasn't ideal for me. So when I made the shift, it was really scary because I knew there's going to be a shift in revenue.
Yeah.
I also had, interestingly enough, had been sitting on my corporate network and was kind of giving it out to career coaches that I would do referral buddies with, and I'd give them all the people, and they had introduced me to entrepreneurs. So I started saying, well, I need to start building out this network. And of course, this was, oh my goodness, like 6 years ago. So LinkedIn in itself was just gaining momentum. I often wonder, what would life be like? What would my business be like without LinkedIn, without these social platforms that make networking and growing, doing sales so much easier. So that's what I started. I really decided. I also was getting tired from all of the face-to-face networking. And I thought there had to be a better way. So the shift had multiple reasons. Better for me, but also I noticed I wanted to have a distinction and a difference between my social life and my business sales. And so I wanted to go to these events, but just want to have fun, not sitting there worried about getting business cards and So I just cold turkey shifted. I did have, I connected with Capital One, who I'd been with for 7 years. And I did have, they immediately hired me, which kind of gave me a lot of validation on the shift. And I thought, oh, well, this is going to be great. They gave me a bunch of clients, but then all of a sudden it stopped. And I then didn't have any other company clients lined up. So I went through a couple really significant starts and stops in terms of revenue and opportunity. But I knew it was right. And I kept building my network on LinkedIn. And
Okay.
I had a really good base. And I would say, you know, for anyone else doing this, what made it work really well for me is that I had this 11-year time in the corporate world, and I just needed to take those people and start linking in even more and reaching out and building my network from there. And that's what I did.
Mm-hmm.
In conjunction with setting up an active sales engine, which I had not done before. And I got my assistant, now my COO, to help me build a sales engine. And
what does that look like? What's a sales engine in your world?
In my world, it's something I've made up because I do everything that's a reflection of what I love and what's right for me. So I was not getting a lot of excitement from going to face-to-face networking events. And I thought there's got to be a way to network online and virtually that's just as effective, but also that I can do it all the time and not at night.
Yes.
And so I just started using LinkedIn as a way to just regularly do cold outreach to people. And then I got the sales assistant part of it is doing research and finding people. And then we reach out and we give a compelling reason why I always have a compelling reason why someone should connect with me, which is to explore. I also write articles. At the time, I think this coincided with my becoming a contributor to Inc. and Forbes, and actually multiple other publications, which now I've kind of streamlined down into 2. But I was seeking people to feature in articles, but I was also seeking people to connect with, to network, but then to look for clients. So all of that happened in conjunction with that shift that just started pushing me in that direction, and then building a base that I've continued to build over time.
That's so wonderful. And so when did you, and there was so much there. I wouldn't take that in. I was like, okay, Laura's people are on LinkedIn. They're not hanging out on Facebook or Instagram. Like, she might be there to put some stuff in. I see you have a presence there, but you're not utilizing that so much for like the sales engine. The sales engine makes it on LinkedIn. So everyone needs to know where your people are at. And then you also leveraged media, having that, those credentials of Inc. and Forbes, like, oh wait, she's legit. She's the real deal. Okay. So then the idea for the Genius Habit, your book, when did you get that idea, and how did you pursue it to make it real?
Yeah. So that, my goal with my business was, it's my dream job. It's the work that's going to give me joy and fulfillment. And that's my number one goal. However, I want it to always grow and to provide income for me and provide the lifestyle I want. And it is to make money as well. And so part of what I've done in terms of growing the business is to check in with, is this going to give me joy? Is it going to be fulfilling? And what are ways that I can scale and grow that are also aligned with that? The book has always been something that was a scalable option. Like, well, one way to reach people that can't work with me directly is through a book. And of course, living in New York City, it's a bubble. I have more friends that are published authors than probably most people. It's crazy. So I had a lot of friends that were going through it. So I was not super familiar, but I knew about that world existing. So it was kind of there. Now, I knew when I started this journey that I needed to have a well-established platform, and I needed to have a well thought out kind of baked idea. And so I didn't even think of the book until I felt the process and the methodology and the idea was fully baked. And in many ways, sometimes it's never, because it's always evolving. But what first started it was I got a Tedx Talk, and this was 5 years ago.
Okay.
When I got the Tedx Talk, which had been a goal of mine, I was so excited. And it was the first time, though, that it forced me to really get my work and what I do and what's my idea onto paper. And I'd been doing talks, but not about my whole, it wasn't, TEDx really forced the thinking around what's the idea.
Yeah.
And I also had the really fascinating opportunity of this man offered to help me with my talk for free, because he wanted the opportunity to help he was a writer, and he's like, TEDx was, it's still the rage, but 5 years ago, it was a really big deal, and he wanted to have experience. But anyway, the process of working with him got the methodology on paper and I saw it for the first time.
Wow. Because
saw
before it was in your head, it was like, I
it
just
was
do
there and I was
thing.
doing it with my clients, but I had never seen it on paper.
Right.
And that was the real starting point. So then once I had the methodology on paper, I started evolving it more aggressively. It started taking shape even more and getting and refining. So probably 3 years after the Tedx talk, I thought, well, maybe now it's time to do a book proposal. Maybe it's time. And I didn't even feel the time, but I also had an agent reach out to me and she told me that, now is the time. And that's kind of.
Did she find you through your Tedx talk? She just heard about, how did she that's when an agent reaches out to you.
I know. And I'm trying to remember how that happened. Oh, now I know. What happened was I reached out to a writer to help me write the book proposal. I got connected to someone who was really amazing. She said, I have an agent that I always work with. I really want to share this idea with her because I think she's going to want to represent you. She did. And they kind of came to me as a team and said, this is awesome. We love your work. We think you should go for it right now. And I was also kind of, let's try, like putting my toe in the water. Like maybe I'm ready, maybe I'm not sure. And they really pushed me and we said, okay, let's go for it. And that's when we put together a book proposal. We shipped it out to all the publishers and we got no, and more no's.
Thank you for sharing the reality. And then you got all these yeses, right?
No. And that would be, we got all no's. And so
all no's.
All no's. And then we said, okay, let's go again in a couple months. And we're going to shoot some publishers that we didn't hit and go from a different theme, and more no's, and more no's. So it tanked and it ended. And so I was sitting there, I was like, well, I guess this wasn't the time. And we thought, let's all revisit each other in a year. And I thought, okay, well, I've learned enough in my business life that what you want sometimes doesn't come as when you think, and you always need more time is never a bad thing. So we resynced a year later, and the agent was pregnant, and so was the writer, and they were kind of not really into it anymore. And I thought, and so they said no, and no. And so I started from scratch again. And I don't want to, it goes on and on, but that basically, it prompted me that ending let me think again, is this right for me? And it kept coming back as, it's a really good way to scale. And I love the fact that I'm helping more people see themselves for who they are and find work that they love. It's aligned with my purpose, and that's what kept me going.
Yes. And so eventually you get to the yes, because the book is out. So
so it took another year of, it took another 2 years of finding writers, starting to work with them, it not being right, coming up with proposals, sending it to agents, them not being into it. It was a lot of work and a lot of no's. And I kept saying, maybe this isn't going to work out. And I was fine with that. I was like, if it doesn't work out, then this isn't meant to be.
Right. You tried.
Finally, I think it was really interesting right after I got pregnant, because that was, my path to pregnancy was very similar to the book deal.
Yeah.
When I got pregnant, I found this writer. I got connected to a writer. She looked at the proposal and the shape it was, made some suggestions that felt spot on. And we gelled so well that I thought, this is it. This is going to work. We came up with a new proposal, and, I shipped it out to a bunch of agents, and a lot of them came back excited. And then I found the agent that I'm working with now. So then from that point on, it was a lot of yeses.
Yes. Yeah. You had to be willing to go through a lot of freaking no's.
Yes.
Sit with it, start from scratch, make some shifts, but you didn't give up. I love that. So tell us, what is the Genius Habit? If you can give us kind of just that overview of what is this and why does it matter so much? I know that this is what you're really taking a stand for.
Yeah. I mean, the Genius Habit is my answer to that crisis that I had. It is, and one element of the crisis that I didn't mention before is that there was a ton of information on what created success, but I found very little on how. what are the habits and the ways that you operate every day in order to love your job and do something that's a reflection of who you are, but also have it, create the kind of success you want. And of course, how you define success is really important. It's different from each person. So that's the first thing. So the genius habit is that answer. It is a systematic methodology. It's a tracking system that it's a new habit that if you do it once a week, it helps you learn what kind of habits you need to build in order to do things differently and that are more aligned with who you are, but also to achieve what you want. And it's merely answering 15 questions a week in a format that allows you to quantitatively, you get a number. So you see quantitatively week over week how you're performing on the things that really matter. And the qualitative answers to those questions really allow you to tap into answers that are beneath the surface within yourself that you're often not even conscious of.
Right. This is so fascinating, Laura. So why is it that people really don't feel or hear what's going on underneath that surface and that subconscious?
Yeah, I think they don't, because we've been taught to the opposite, that the answers come from society, from school, from our parents, from our friends, and that we have not been taught to trust our instinct or even to trust what is really authentic to ourselves. I think there's another element of this in the sense that society has given us a definition of success that most people take on without thinking, that involves power, it involves prestige, it involves money. And so a lot of people, in absence of coming up with their own definition of success and getting connected to their own truth, use that definition and make decisions about their career based on, it's so typical to decide on a job based on how much income they're getting or the benefits or all of these external things that really have nothing to do with how you feel, how challenged you're going to be intellectually, or how fulfilling a job is going to be, which is what is most important for real success.
Yes, absolutely. And what you're not, I know for me in my 20s, I was just like, I want a job and I need to be paid so I can live in New York City and do these things. But then, you have these wake up calls in your life where you just say, I know for me that was like, there's got to be more than this. Like, this can't be it. This can't, because I can't do this for all the years, because I always wanted to work. I wasn't that woman, and no knock on someone who is, but I like working. I
love work. Yeah,
I do. And it's like, I like to do this when, as my husband knows, I'm like, I need to work right now. Like I have things that I want to get out in this world. I want to contribute. I like working with my clients and helping to troubleshoot and problem solve and help them see something. Before our call, I was working with another client. I'm like, oh, I'm so excited for her and what she's building and to be a part of that. But our willingness to say, hey, I'm going to rewrite these rules, and I'm going to step into my genius. That's a bold move. It's a bold kind of proclamation to the world saying, I'm going to step into my genius. The world wants you'll be happy if you hang out in your competence, or you hang out in excellence. I was very much inspired by The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks. Yes. Right. And so, but that you really hopping on saying, no, it's the genius. And it's not, I love what you said. It's not just, there were so much information and tips on the what around this, but like, okay, so genius, but then how do I do that?
Exactly. And the other fascinating thing is when I did the research and I researched the science and the neuroscience and the psychology of success and happiness, the answers are clear there. That's what's so confounding to me, is that science has made such leaps and bounds, and it's clear, research has shown us that these things are what really matters for success and happiness. But society's voice is louder, and we think what society says is right. But the science backed up, and that's the tracker that I created that's in the Genius Habit is the distillation of all of that science. Because that, to me, it's like a lot of people think this idea of loving what you do and having purpose is touchy-feely. It's hard to, there's no, it's not practical, but it actually is, because the science will say, if you want to be intrinsically motivated, if you want to have the kind of energy that never goes away. You have to be fulfilled by the impact that you're having. Without that, work is actually hard labor, which is why people burn out and why they're not achieving what they want or the success, because they're too tired.
They're too freaking tired, right? And then we get sick and we do things that hurt our body and all the things. Laura, where can people get their hands on the Genius Habit? How can they find out more about you?
Well, you can go to lauragarnett.com, and on my website, you can also join my newsletter, and you get the first chapter of the Genius Habit for free if you join the newsletter. And then of course on the website and on thegeniushabit.com, you can read all about the book. You can purchase it from my website, and also download the performance tracker.
Perfect. All right, everyone, we will have those links up on our show notes page as well. You can go to jennyfennig.com. Click on the blog and podcast tab and just type in Laura or Genius Habit, and you will find this episode right there, and you can click on all that juicy goodness. Final question today, Laura. What is the gutsiest move you've ever made, and how does it inspire your life and work today?
You know, I really think it was that moment when I walked out of the Frank Gehry building and I said, I'm going to build my dream job, because at the same time, my parents and my family were asking me, when are you going to get a job? And I had to trust myself, which felt really weird given everything we've talked about today, and believe that I could do it, for one, and B, that it was the right decision. And I had to ignore my family. I had to ignore society, and I just tapped into myself. And I think if I had not done that, my life would not be, I love my job. I love my life. And that was an extremely gutsy move.
It is that courage to say, I'm going out on my own. And that really is why I have this podcast, is to shine that light for people, because it is terrifying. And you got the voices from society, family, the world that's like, what? You're going to do that? And you walk away from that every 2-week paycheck. That's freaking gutsy. That's freaking gutsy. And just know you'll figure it out. You will absolutely figure it out. So thank you so much for being here, Laura. It's been a true pleasure to be able to connect with you in this way. I know everyone's going to get their hands on the Genius Habit, and y'all take one right action from listening to this episode. Trust that you're allowed to be in your genius. And when you really claim that and protect it, wow, what's going to happen for you. This is Jenny Fennig sending you so much love, magic, and confidence as you get gutsy. I'll see you next time.